I'm using 6.5mm knitting needles. And this was the yarn that I used. It's from the company Karen. It's bulky size 5 yarn in the shade Whisper. So the most important thing to do when you're knitting is to make some gauge squares, because knitting is different than crochet. Crochet you can kind of measure as you go, but knitting you have to have everything measured and then go. I usually make them like 15 stitches across and then 15 rows, so it ends up like kind of more a rectangle shape. But I made so many gauge squares for this project because I didn't know how thin or thick I wanted the yarn. I made this one with 2 strands of yarn and a bigger needle size. But then I felt like it was a little too thick. I wanted it to be a little thinner. This one I made with 2 strands but then a smaller needle size. This one I made with 1 strand but it was a bigger needle size. And then this one I made with 1 strand and it was like a super small needle size. And then this was the one that I landed on. So I did 15 stitches across, and then once I did that I didn't do 15 rows down, but instead I did a little bit of ribbing stitch as well because I knew I wanted to add some ribbing, so I wanted to see how much that would be. So once you have your gauge square, like the desired look of the pattern, I count out 10 stitches and I measure how long that is. So I count this way 10 stitches, and I measured that to be 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimeters. And then I measure vertically 10 stitches, and that was 1.75 inches or 4.5 centimeters. And then I did the same for the ribbing, and that was, I found that 10 stitches could kind of stretch to like 3 inches. And then using that with my measurements, you have to do a little math, unfortunately, for those people out there who don't like to do math. The formula that I used to calculate how many stitches I was going to cast on was your measurement divided by the length of this 10 stitches, so mine was 2.5, and then multiplied by 10. So for example, I'll put like all of my measurements on the screen so you can see. Just another note, you want to make sure that the number is also a multiple of 4. So a couple of them I rounded up to be a multiple of 4, just because with the ribbing, I did the 2 stitch ribbing. So you do 2 knit, 2 purl, and so you need a multiple of 4 to create that pattern. And then this is just a sneak peek of my knitting setup. It gives me an excuse to just lay in bed all day. So this is what it's looking like so far. I just knit in a tube to create the body part, and this measures from my waist to my armpit. And then for the sleeves, again, this is from my wrist to my armpit. I also didn't officially cast off any of the stitches. I just put a piece of yarn on them so that I could put them back on the needles. And my plan is to sew the arms to the body like this, under the armpits. And then I'm going to put all the stitches back on my needles and knit in a circle again to create the off the shoulder ribbing. So I just wanted to explain how I did the arms. As you saw, I casted on 32 stitches for my cuff, and then I needed to get to 56 stitches for the upper arm. So to do that, I just did 56 minus 32, and that was 24. And then I divided that by 4, which is 6. So I knew I wanted to do 6 rounds of increases with doing 4 increases in that round, if that makes sense. So I did write this down, but I did 12 rows of the ribbing stitch, and then I did a row of increases. So I have 32 stitches. I divided by that by 4, which is 8. So I did 8 knits, like starting the stockinette stitch, I did knitting 8, and then I increased, knit 8, increase, knit 8, increase, knit 8. So I had 4 increases in that round. And then I did 5 just regular rows of stockinette stitch. And then I did another round of increases. In this one again, since you have 4 more stitches, so I did knit 9, increase, knit 9, increase, knit 9, increase, knit 9, increase. So that was 4 increases. And I basically just did that until I reached 52 stitches. And that took me 6 rounds of increasing, I think. It just helps to create kind of like more of a gradual increase. I'm gonna explain a little bit more on how I constructed the pieces once I had them. I sewed the arms to the body, like underneath my armpits. I just did that with a single crochet just from the inside so that it wouldn't show on the outside. I basically just single crocheted 24 stitches across there under the armpit, and then on the other opposite side I did the same thing, so 24 stitches. And then I put all of the needles back on my hook, and I had a total of, I think it was 156 stitches. I knew that I wanted the ribbing to be really tight. I needed it to get it down to 128 stitches because I wanted it to be like really secure and tight. I had to do 7 rounds of decreases to get from 156 to 128. I just did decreases in the corners of where I attached the arms, so it's on both sides here. It creates sort of like diagonal line where you can see the decreases, but there's these on the front and then on the back as well. And this just helps to maintain like the multiple of 4 stitches. So I was down to 128 stitches on my needles. I just did the ribbing to measure 8 inches, and then I just did an Italian bind off. I think it just makes sure it's a little stretchy because I knew that I wanted it on my shoulders, so I didn't want it to be really tight. This is the final product. I love it so much. Thank you so much for watching.